All right, welcome back, Raider Nation, a special live edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also, our video stream brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Don't forget, you can get 150% sign-on bonus, deposit bonus, I should say, by using the code YouTube150. Again, that's YouTube150. Go check out BetUS. We'll show you. We're going to bet with BetUS in our first break, so stay tuned for that. But thanks to them for bringing you the video stream. And for those listening on the podcast, yes, we did the show live on Wednesday, and you're listening to us on Thursday. For the radio audience, listening to us on Sunday. So we got it all covered. And Mo, I want to tell you this, that one of the reasons we're doing this live show on Wednesday is because Thursday Night Football. I noticed that people were having trouble watching our show on Thursday nights because they're watching football. So we listened to you. I did a poll on our last show, and you guys said, hey, yeah, do it on Wednesday instead. And that would help us out. So that's what we're doing. And I welcome you back here. I'm Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my co-host. That is Mr. Mo Moton. He's a senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnaut.com, where you can also find my work. Mo can also be seen on Mondays and Thursdays, right, Mo? Mondays and Thursdays. Thursdays. TNT Sports on True TV. At 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you check him out there. We're talking Raiders football. The hubbub over the loss to Carolina has not died down completely. There's some new information. We'll get to that in a second here. But we also want to talk about Sunday. And that is the Raiders get back on the field. They have an opportunity to go out and maybe erase a little bit of the stink from the Carolina loss as they face the struggling Cleveland Browns, who actually come in to a game with the Raiders after somewhat losing a similar game to the New York Giants, of all people. And not only did the Giants beat them, but they beat them pretty handily. So we're going to take a look at that as well. Also, we will get to your calls. We got a lot of them today. And again, we're getting to them as much as we can. So please do not take offense if we don't get your call on. We're trying to get them on as they come in. And we'll do an extra segment. So for those of us, you listening to us on the radio, you'll hear us go into what we call our overtime segment, which is for calls. So that'll be off the radio, but you'll be able to hear that on the podcast feed or on the YouTube video. So stick with us on that one. All right, Mo, the Raiders, they need to bounce back after this loss to Carolina. It's still lingering. And of course, it always happens that way because until you have another game, you don't have an opportunity to maybe change the narrative, if you will. But aside from Raider Nation being upset about it, the conversation around what Antonio Pierce said during the press conference, where he said, "Hey," he said, "I think as the game went on, I'm quoting him again. I think there's definitely some individuals that made business decisions and will make business decisions going forward as well." He said that. Devontae Adams was on Kay Adams' show. Too many Adams for me to speak at once, but anyway. And I want to read what he said because I find some of it's fine and interesting. But the second part of this quote, Mo, I want to get your comments on it because to me, it stuck out again. He said, here's Devontae Adams telling Kay Adams, "I agree. We can't change the score late in the fourth quarter. So you just got to put the best stuff you can on tape." Okay. I think a lot of people were doing that. And then there were some guys out there who were just trying to see another day. Okay, fine. Then he goes on to say, that's really not what the game is about. And if you look at the tape across the whole game, it wasn't really just late in the game. It was multiple times throughout the 3 hours we were out there. Mo, what is Devontae Adams saying with the last part of that quote?
That the Raiders came out flat and they tried to dress it up, but they were flat for basically the entire game. And to me, that's the inexcusable, unacceptable part of this. I said this on my Bleacher Report Live today that you have a problem. You have a big red flag when it's September and you have guys not all the way in, possibly checking out. You go through offseason, you go through OTAs, mini camp, training camp, preseason to get to the regular season where the games finally count. And 3 weeks into the season, you have guys on the field who aren't all the way in. To me, that's a poor reflection of the players, but also it speaks to the leadership, Antonio Pierce and that coaching staff. You don't have your guys ready to play a September game in front of your home fans, their first home game of the season. To me, that if they don't come out with some fire, on Sunday,
yeah,
this season can easily unravel. And that's why I titled my stream today over on Bleacher Report, how the Raiders can save their season from disaster. Because if this is a loss and it looks like a lot how it did against Carolina, this thing can roll downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's why I bring up the Devontae Adams quote, because to me, remember, everything that we've been told from leadership, coaching staff, players has been AP's our guy. Even the TV commentators, the first 3 games of the season, every time they come on, boy, Antonio Pierce has this team ready. You know, he's got the confidence of the team, and he's got these guys bought into the Raider way, right? And it appears that's not true, because, and I'm not saying for all guys, of course Max Crosby's bought in, of course Devontae Adams is bought in. I mean, I get that, but that's 2 guys. So to me, the concern with that is to come out so flat. That's a reflection on coaching staff. I saw some comments. Some folks were posting an old locker room speech from Marvin Lewis, just ripping his Bengals when they weren't playing, basically saying, "Hey, if you don't want to play, I'll find somebody effing who does want to play." And the question was, Marvin Lewis should give this speech in the locker room. I say, Marvin Lewis isn't the head coach. Okay. So this is not a Antonio Pierce bash session, but he's the boss. He is the guy. And so to me, preparation is lacking. Okay. You cannot have a successful NFL team without preparation and execution. Right. And to me, the fact that you come out in week 3 in your home opener without preparation and clearly without execution, and we'll get into some of that later, because Ted Nguyen from The Athletic, Mo, you sent me earlier a tweet where he's doing some film breakdown of the run game, and it's very concerning, because it's not Ted just trying to take shots at the Raiders because they're down. It literally is showing how they are not executing, and it doesn't seem like, not only do they maybe not have the right personnel, but perhaps they don't know what they're doing. And so that goes back to coaching and preparation. So to me, that's where I'm still concerned. Now, we'll see. Maybe they come out against Cleveland and this goes away. Maybe they come out and, man, they are crisp. And for whatever happened last week was an aberration, and they start to find some consistency. But to me, I mean, it's crazy, because I always laugh when people say it's a must-win game. But don't you think the Raiders have to come out and they have to show that they are a cohesive team, that they are prepared, and that they're on board?
Absolutely, but I like Paul Edgerton's comment in the chat. He said, one thing I never thought we'd see is a lack of effort under AP, and that's what surprised me, because one of the staples of this team last year was they're going to always give maximum effort under Antonio Pierce. They're an energized team under Antonio Pierce now, after what they were under Josh McDaniels, and this early in the season to not feel that energy, that effort, that urgency, that's the issue. Now you bring up Ted Nguyen's breakdowns, a 2-minute breakdown. I retweeted it on my Twitter account, Moton, Moemoton. You will see the breakdown there. And what Scott is referring to is you're basically watching 2 offensive linemen block 1 defender, leaving another defender open to get the ball carrier. You're also seeing Zamir White hit the wrong hole on the zone blocking scheme. And this is why I say that I'm not advocating to bench Zamir White, but it's clear to me that the Raiders trust Alexander Mattison a lot more in this scheme than they do Zamir White. I brought up stats video. You'll see that Alexander Mattison is taking all the carries inside the 10-yard line. So inside the 10-yard line in the red zone, Alexander Mattison has 3 carries. Zamir White has 0. You have to pull it back to inside the 15-yard line until you get to see Zamir White take some carries inside the 20. So the Raiders are telling you, regardless of what Antonio Pierce says at the podium, the Raiders are telling you that they believe in Alexander Mattison more than Zamir White in this scheme. So there's the disconnect for me there, along with the play of the offensive line. And when you look at Ted Nguyen's video, it doesn't even seem like the Raiders practiced their zone blocking scheme with the running backs.
Yes.
It just seems like they're just trying it out for the first time on the field in the regular season. Like they haven't gone through the whole spring, summer, OTAs, training camp, practicing this. Again, the mistakes that you see are very fundamental. Again, it's 2 guys blocking 1 defender, when it's clear that that there should be some spread there between the defenders, between the offensive linemen blocking defenders. But the mistakes there are questionable, because again, you don't practice this before the game. You haven't practiced this off season. You're just now working through the kinks of the system. To me, that's inexcusable. The Raiders are not going to change your scheme right now, I don't think.
Yeah.
And that's why I advocate for giving Alexander Madison more carries, more touches. By the way, Alexander Madison has scored in every Raider game this season so far.
There you go. I got to point that out. But to Ted's point, though, as well, when he talks, because a lot of people, Zamir White can't do this, Zamir White can't do that. Now, there were times when he had openings, right? To your point about missing the spot where he's supposed to be. So to me, that goes back to the preparation and what you said too, which is like, did you not practice this all spring and all during camp? Like, what were you doing? And yes, you could say, oh, Luke Getsy, fire him, fire Luke Getsy. Okay, fine. But he's not ultimately responsible, right? The coaching staff in general, Antonio Pierce is responsible. And to me, if you have players going out there and aren't hitting the right blocks, and Brock Bowers is missing blocks, and Michael Mayer is missing blocks, and offensive linemen are double teaming when they're dropping off the guy they're supposed to. This is why Carolina stopped the run so well. That is just, I mean, it's to me incredibly eye-opening. And this is not just me slamming the Raiders when they're down. It's just shocking to see at the NFL level. You could see teams not playing well, schemes not working, that kind of thing. But to see this lack of sort of any cohesive unit working together is just, it's mind-blowing to me.
It's completely out of sync, and that's why the Raiders are the worst rushing team in the league right now. 32nd. It's not just the running back. It's not just the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
It may not just be the players. I don't know how they're coaching it, but to me, they're not coaching it well enough if your veteran offensive linemen are making basic mistakes on their blocking assignments. So,
right.
And until they fix that, no matter who touches the football, no matter who you put in, I know a lot of fans want to see Jackson Powers Johnson more. I do too. At left guard, or, you know, with Dylan Parham still in the field, not taking Dylan Parham off the field. But no matter who you put out there, if guys aren't hitting their assignments correctly, then you're not going to get optimal results regardless.
Correct. And not only that, but Jackson Powers Johnson could be a freaking superstar. Fine, great. But if Dylan Parham and Colton Miller, a veteran, a wily veteran at this point in his career, are blocking the wrong people, I mean, I just don't understand what's been going on. And to me, that's the biggest question, because Ted's film, and I watched the All 22, and I was noticing too, even on defense, lack of communication. So it's like, and Patrick Graham's not a new coach. I mean, he's been there, right? He's got most of the same guys. He's got new guys there too, but you're seeing them out of sync too. So it's sort of like, even when they're playing well, the defense, great. It's sometimes even despite the fact that was blown assignments is what I noticed as well. A couple, especially in the defensive backfield, where guys just made nice plays, even though things broke down. So to me, this is where I think this weekend against the Browns is so important, because I would imagine these coaches were hard on these players this week. They should have been, at least. And if they can come out and show that they're executing correctly, and we won't know till it's all over, then fine. Then maybe it was some weird hiccup and just a bad week. I don't know. But I think that the concern is going to be there until they prove it otherwise. And by the way, all of this, because I know how sensitive our listeners and our viewers are to kind of the national view of the Raiders, this is even more embarrassing. So if you were thinking the Raiders were going to be taken in any way more seriously, they're not. This is really shocking to people who are watching it, because you just don't see it happen that often in the NFL.
I see a lot of fire. Our guys, the Unfiltered Truth, already want to fire James Craig a month into the season. But to me, this isn't new. If you're a Raider fan, you've been watching for decades, right? Over the last 20, and I said this on the last show, it seems like this isn't new. You get a system in, some of the players don't fit the system. There are coaching question marks here. Does this player fit the scheme? Should we start this player? Now, Antonio Pierce did say at the podium that business decisions were made on behalf of the team going forward behind closed doors. So we will see if some guys are benched, some guys have their roles reduced against the Browns. That's something I'm going to be watching. We already know Isaiah Polomau, as far as the unofficial depth chart is concerned, is going to fill in for Marcus Epps on the defensive side. Right. I want to see what the starting personnel is going to be for the offensive line, and if Alexander Madison actually gets more touches behind that line.
Right. And somebody brought up in the conversation over the last few days that, okay, so he's talking about people are taking care of business. And does that apply to something? I mean, the Raiders have like an entire city worth of coaches. They have 32 coaches. Okay. a lot. Somebody mentioned in the chat, do they have too many cooks in the kitchen? I don't know, but with that many cooks in the kitchen, you'd think people would at least know their assignments. So I'm interested in that too. Yeah, you can bench a guy if he was one of those people that Pierce was calling out. Great, sit him. I agree with that 100%. But if you're putting players in, especially because you got some young players, you put them in a position where they don't know what they're doing in the first place because it hasn't been taught correctly or whatever happened, then is it really their fault? Now, yes, if they're doing things towards the end of the game where they're giving up or they're doing things for their own needs instead of the team, then still you hold them accountable. But Mo, I think this is just a conglomeration, a mix of all of this jazz, right? It's all of the players, some of the players who are doing whatever they're doing. You got some coaches who clearly, for some reason, aren't getting through. You would think that they would see this in practice and work on it. But it's weird. I can't find the words just because it seems so rudimentary to me to watch an NFL team consistently miss blocks offensively, miss assignments defensively. This team is more I'm not saying this team's a Super Bowl or even a playoff team, but they have more talent than that. They should not be in those positions.
Caxter 23 in the chat says the Bears fans warned us about this with Getsy, and we talked about it. But here's a point that a lot of people haven't brought up that I want to just put it on the floor right now in front of you all. This is why fans would prefer their head coach to also be their offensive play caller. Because in my opinion, I'm not in the Raider locker room, but in my opinion, there seems to be a disconnect between Antonio Pierce and his offensive coaching staff. Antonio Pierce, week after week, gets up to the podium and tells you, Zamir White's our guy. We need to do what's best for Zamir White. And it's clear that this zone blocking scheme is not what's best for Zamir White. You saw that last year. Wasn't a primary zone blocking scheme. Ran well the last 4 yards of the season in place with Josh Jacobs. You're bringing a new scheme. He's telling you, Antonio Pierce is telling you, Zamir White's our guy. But as I just pointed out, Alexander Madison is getting all the goal line carries. So which is it? Do you want Zamir White to get the 20-plus touches or not? Or is he just a complimentary running back that is going to share time with Alexander Madison? And that goes back to my point that I'm bringing to the floor here is that when you have a head coach who's also the play caller, there is not that you're not going to have a miscommunication because he's going to do what he wants to do. Now, for better or worse, under Josh McDaniels is for worse. But if you have a competent play caller and he's also the head coach, you're not going to have that disconnect there. So he's going to tell you exactly what his plan is. Antonio Pierce, being a defensive-minded head coach, may have a certain philosophy, but he hired Luke Getsy, who may have a different philosophy. And their heads may collide. We're not seeing it because they're not going to argue in the public eye. We're not seeing it, but there may be some clashes of philosophy there between what Antonio Pierce wants and what Luke Getsy wants with his scheme.
But Mo, wouldn't you, when you interview the guy to hire him, wouldn't you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, so this is what I expect of you?
Absolutely. But sometimes you know this. You have an agreement with someone, and then it gets down to business, and it's not what you talked about.
Right.
Things take a left turn.
I saw that today with my alma mater and its quarterback who left 3 games into the season.
I saw the news on that. So at times you may talk about it and say, yeah, this is what we want. And the person you're hiring say, yeah, I can fit that in. I can do that. And then you get to the job, you get to the point where you know what hits the fire. And then the offensive coach says, well, I want to do it this way. And Antonio Pierce says, no, I want more of this. And then what you try to do is, in an ideal situation, you have a middle ground. You have a compromise between both sides. You say, okay, we'll take a little bit of this, we'll take a little bit of that, and hopefully it works. In this case, it's not working. It's clearly not working. Antonio Pierce says, we're a team. And he was asked about the zone blocking scheme. I forgot what reporter asked him about it, but someone asked him, you need to change it, tweak it, whatever. Does it work for you? And he says, we need to be a team that do what works best, basically what he said. And to me, and I tweeted this, I said, it's obvious the scheme does not work for the run game. Again, you're 32nd in rushing yards per game. It's clearly not working. Yeah. You are by far the worst rushing team in the league. Either you change the scheme or you add in someone who's best to run that scheme as a running back and your offensive lineman, you also have to coach them up as well. So unless something changes, Scott, we're going to get the same results, and which is not very much.
Yeah, I want, and again, for those thinking you're going to abandon a scheme between one game, I don't see it happening. So what do? You have to execute more. Do you run Madison more? Is he able to do what Zamir White isn't able to do, which is bounce outside runs? Now Zamir White had opportunities, but that's he didn't take advantage of them. We saw that in the film. We saw that there was times when he was supposed to, the play had him going outside and he didn't. He tried to cut inside and of course didn't get any yardage. So we'll have to watch that. All right, we're going to take our first break. Okay. And then we're going to come back. We'll talk about this and see how it all goes down. And we appreciate everybody in the chat. Some folks, like the postman, thinks we're talking in circles. Well, go ahead, get a show and don't talk in circles. But anyway, we'll have fun with it anyway. But thanks for the comment. All right, we're going to take that break. When we come back, we'll get right back to talking Raiders, talking the Browns. You're listening to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. All right, speaking of BetUS, Mo, okay, we're going to go in now and we are going to bet some football. You ready for this, buddy? We do this every week, and we're doing this thanks to our good friends at BetUS. As you can see here, we're up on the website. And by the way, want to tell you again, you get 150% deposit bonus using the code YouTube150. Again, YouTube150. And you can get 150% bonus up to $2,000 your first deposit. Second and third deposits, they're still going to give you 125% up to $2,000. So go check it out. Okay, Mo, let's jump in here and look at some of these Raiders props, shall we? Are we going to do that?
Didn't we hit the over last week on the Raiders total?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We hit it last week. And I'm going to scroll down here. As you can see, easy to find stuff on the BetUS website. But anyway, we're going to go into the markets here and we're going to go to game props. Well, that's game props. I want to look for player props, which is out. I'll show you how to get around here. Boom. I got to go back out, right?
Shout out to Caxter, by the way, Caxter23 in the chat. Ty only comes on when special occasions. I had to make business decisions, Caxter. That's why I wore the tie in the last show. That's right. So we are gonna bet some football. Okay, first let's go in and take a look at the game's still a 1-point game, right? So the Raiders favored by 1.5, actually. Oops, it would help if I checked here. Okay, there we go. And where are we going? There we are. Okay. All right, here we are. So we're going to go in. Oops. Basically a pick'em game.
Yeah, it's a pick'em game. 1 point now. And like I said, I still like the Raiders in this game, despite what happened last week. Over under 37, Mo. The BetUS does not think that the Raiders and Browns are going to score a lot of points, clearly.
Yeah, the Browns haven't scored more than 18 points in the game. Deshaun Watson completing 57.8% of his passes. They're struggling to establish their run game. The Browns' issues are very similar to the Raiders. Their best pass rusher has a bunch of injuries. Max Crosby has a high ankle sprain. I wouldn't be surprised about the under here, simply because, and you're going over.
I'm going over.
I wouldn't be surprised simply because neither team has a reliable run game, though we said that about the Panthers last week, and look what happened. But if it's going to go over, it'll be because of the Raiders, not because of the Browns, in my opinion. Exactly.
And again, I have no confidence necessarily in the Raiders offense, but something just tells me that it's going to go. So I'm laying down 150 here. I'm parlaying this, buddy. I'm doing Raiders -1 and the over. Yes. Because I'm thinking like a 24-17 kind of game. It's
funny because over at Bleach Report, I just filed that piece over there.
Yeah,
we have the Raiders winning 20-17, so it would be a push for us. But I was surprised that the crew over at BR, we're mostly on the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 6-2 count, an 8-man panel 6-2 count in favor of the Raiders. But again, that over is a little risky because if the Raiders don't get the run game going, and if they forget about Brock Bowers being on the field like they did last week, again, Brock Bowers only 4 targets against the Carolina Panthers. If they forget Brock Bowers is in a Raider uniform, you're going to get a 13-10 game.
Right.
And I can very easily see that happening with the defenses playing a lot better than they did last week, and the offense is struggling.
Yeah. So what am I doing here? Oh, I see what I'm doing. Okay. Trying to get a parlay. Here we go. My goodness.
Scott's trying to win some money.
I'm trying to win some money here. And what is it doing? So, yes.
You got to call your account manager, Scott.
Yes, I do. Okay.
So the account manager's for Scott.
I know. See, and that's the thing with BetUS. Look, amount wagered on parlay can't be 0. Oh, that's straight bets. There we go. Look, quick bet options. What am I doing here? Straight.
Click the parlay
Yes.
tab at the top. You see it?
Yeah, I picked that.
Okay.
Game and over. There we
And
go.
then right there, right where you're. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there we go. Bingo. See, it's my age. Thank you, young man.
You need a little more Moton magic for your.
All right. So there we go. There's my bet. It's down. It's down. You can see I confirmed it there. Be a nice little win if I can get that one. But game props too. I'm looking at this. You can see game props. You got player props. Is there player props that you were interested in, Mo? Where were you looking at?
I did want to see Alexander Madison's player props when they do pop up. I told last week. I advised people if you needed a sleeper to pick up Alexander Madison. As I pointed out early in the show, he has scored in every Raider game so far this season. And he did score, while it was a blowout, he did score the Raiders' first touchdown. So for anyone who listened to my advice on that and picked him up off the scrap heap, kudos to you, shout out to you. But I want to see what Alexander Madison's total yards from scrimmage are. I'll be willing to bet that, because I'm willing to bet that he's going to see a lot more action against the Browns this weekend.
Absolutely. And so, yeah. So, I mean, you look at the props in here. It's great. You can go on the players, you can go on the games, and do whatever you want. And there's even an article. Look at this. They give you all the stuff you need to read as well, Mo. That's what I love about BetUS. So do that. We'll keep continuing to show you this stuff as we go through, but there's great stuff here for you from our good friends at BetUS. So remember, YouTube 150, you get the special deal there. We certainly appreciate that. And appreciate that. And the show brought to you by BetUS. Okay, now we're going to get back into the discussion around the Raiders and what's going on. With this team. And so, Mo, when you think about it too, I think the question for this segment is, what do the Raiders need to show us, right? I mean, I think they got to win this game, but secondarily, they got to show us fundamentally good football. They got to show us that not only the effort and the execution are there, but that this team is together. I think there's a question mark now because of what we heard from the coach and what we heard from some of the players, that they might not all be on the same page, which again is shocking just because of what we heard coming from the offseason.
Well, number one, they have to learn to run the football. And no matter what, eventually they're going to have to learn to run the football, because you're not going to win many games being one-dimensional offense, especially with Gardner Minshew back there. Let's be honest about Gardner Minshew, a low-level starter. He's not elevating the talent around him. The other thing, other than winning the football game, is the defense has to get its mojo back after getting punched in the mouth like that. And on the interior, they've been getting punched in the mouth every week because they're allowing an average of over 150 rushing yards per game. So the defensive front specifically is going to have to show some fight. And I will say this should be the Christian Wilkins game. As I mentioned, Max Crosby has a high ankle sprain. And if you know about high ankle sprains, they usually take a few weeks before you're back to your normal self. Max Crosby didn't have a great game last week. And I think partially because of that high ankle sprain. So Christian Wilkins is going to have to take over this game on the interior. The Browns lost Wyatt Teller, who's their standout guard. He's out for the season with an injury, I believe, or at least on injured reserve.
Injured reserve, yeah.
So this is a matchup that Christian Wilkins can dominate on the interior and take over this football game while Max Crosby is healing up from a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that that's what we have to see from the team. We have to see, I mean, you got to win football games. That's the bottom line here. But I'm just real interested to see how this all works out, how the quarterback bounces back, Gardner Minshew. Was it the right decision for him? You know, I said last show, and we recorded the show right before the announcement kind of was broke by I think it was Ian Rappaport saying that Minshew was indeed going to get the start again. Now things could change. I wouldn't rule out Antonio Pierce surprising us and not going with him in the game, but I still think my gut tells me that it is going to be Minshew, as we've all heard. At the same time, I think if he goes out there and he's not effective, but again, how are you going to be effective if your offensive line isn't blocking or if they're not, the same assignments? So I'm not giving Gardner Minshew a pass by any means, Mo, but when you look at quarterback performance, what are you seeing from Minshew? What has to change for him in order to lead this team better and to accomplish more and get the ball downfield?
He's got to get the ball to his first and second reads. If you remember when Antonio Pierce named Gardner Minshew the starter, he said, we love his mobility. He can create, but he also has to be able to let it rip. Those were his words. I'm quoting him. He said, Gardner Minshew has to let it rip. Sometimes he misses his first and second reads. And if you look at the target share for Devontae Adams in week 1, remember Devontae Adams only had 5 targets. As I pointed out last week, Brock Bowers only had 4 targets. And if you look up at PFF, Pro Football Focus, you'll see that Gardner Minshew, a quarter of the pressures that he feels are self-imposed. So he's holding on to the ball a little too long. He has to let the ball go, get the ball to his first and second reads, and take care of it from there, because sometimes you have to take the layup, Scott. It's great to shoot the three-pointer. It's great to hit the deep ball to Trey Tucker, Devontae Adams downfield, but sometimes you have to take the routine completion because you want to keep the chains moving. You want to be ahead of the down chain. So he has to be able to do that with consistency and not necessarily create pressure for himself in the pocket as far as Gardner Minshew is concerned. Now, I still think he's going to get 5 to 6 weeks to start before the Raiders reassess and maybe toss in Aiden O'Connell. Someone asked in the chat, I think it was Stacks asking, you really think AOC is that bad? It's not that I think AOC is a bad quarterback. I just don't think you want to put him behind this offensive line the way it's blocking right now.
100% agree with that. And I think that you look at the situation, it's about moving the sticks, man. To your point about first and second reads, you got to move the sticks. I mean, you look at the third down efficiency last against the Panthers, it was deplorable. So to me, that's exactly what you need to do. And so we'll see what they do. I mean, look, he's got an opportunity to come back. Minshew's streaky. So he had one good quarter, but other than that, he's kind of been streaky in the downside. So maybe now against Cleveland, it's a good make good game for him, and he can get kind of on a positive streak, right? So we'll see how that all works out. But it's going to be interesting. But we're going to get to your calls now, because we're jamming through this show. We appreciate the video audience being with us live. We also have our radio audience on 101.5 FM KDON in Las Vegas, as well as 98.5 The Bet, which is HD2. So we're on those 2 stations in Las Vegas. But we're going to take a final break here. When we come back, we are going to get to your calls, of course, on the Raider Nation mailbag. So don't go anywhere. You're with Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today.
Stand up. On this edition of the Raider Nation Mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
All right. I told you, I texted Mo a video earlier because we got so many calls. We cannot possibly get to them all, but thank you. And please don't take offense. We will get to calls. If for some reason you don't make it on this show, we're going to do our overtime. We're going into overtime on the video side. Our radio audience, if you miss the overtime, which comes at the end of our show, you can go watch it up on YouTube or on the podcast feed. You'll see an extra segment there of phone calls. So we'll get to all those today. And if you didn't get on this time, we will get you on next time. So call in. But we were inundated by it, Mo. I mean, it was just insane how the phone was blowing up. But I also we had some texts, and I want to get to those too, because some people, still shy. They don't want their voice on for whatever reason. And that's cool, man. Whatever you want to do, we can speak to. So I'm going to start with a text. Is that okay with you, Mo? You okay with that? You're going to work with it?
Texts make me nervous sometimes, but go ahead.
All right, here we go. Let's go for some of them I don't have names on. So you got to leave your name even on the text, because you're not in my contact. So if I don't know, then you need to make sure you do it. But I'm going to read one. I don't know who this is. But it says, hey, Mike Ditka gave up his whole draft for Ricky Williams, a running back, but Telesco stood around with his dick in his hand, waiting for a Christmas miracle franchise quarterback to fall to us in the draft. It's malpractice to think that Uncle Rico, who's 16 and 24, Gardner Minshew, could complete consistently and with all the other high-round draft picks. Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward should be the only decision worth thinking about. Telesco handicapped the first-time coach with lackluster subpar talent at the most important position in professional sports. Commitment to mediocrity. Again, I don't know who sent that in, but a couple of the points there, Mo. Yes, a quarterback in the future, but this text seems to say that Antonio Pierce, he was put into a tough position because he wasn't given a quarterback. that's partly true. But last time I checked, offensive linemen aren't the quarterback. The defense is not the quarterback. All that comes back to coaching. So again, I think it's a lot of things. It's not just one.
Right. But I also think the premise of that text is do what you can, do whatever you can to get a potential franchise
100%.
quarterback, because it could change everything. We just watched Jaden Daniels have his coming out party on Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. And he looks spectacular. By the way, he leads the league in completion rate. And now he's got a deep ball. He has that deep ball accuracy that could change that offense. So if that's a prime example, CJ Stroud before that last year, do what you can if you're the Raiders to get the quarterback. Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce have to make it happen after watching what we're watching for the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yes. All right. First caller is Blake. I believe Blake's a new caller. Maybe he called in a long time ago, but because I remember somebody from Denver, but we've had a bunch of fans from Denver. So here's Blake from Denver.
Blake from Denver. I got cut off because I was rambling because I'm so shocked at how shitty the Raiders are. Really quick, things they need to do. Obviously, the offensive line, the interior offensive line isn't good. Antonio Pierce needs to do the death stare at Getsy again, and the OC thing needs to be fixed. On top of leadership, Marvin Lewis, Joe Philbin, those guys haven't won anything. Those guys are head coaches he brought in to be a veteran. I mean, AP is showing tons of just amateur call. The thing he said about people business for business, that's just going to open yourself up. What is that? They should trade Devontae Adams, get what you can for him. One, first, second round picks, whatever, do it. Get the draft capital. AOC isn't the answer, but he's going to get killed behind that O-line. We just need to start over, fire everyone. And I know it's week 3 of the season, but when we're looking at it at the end of the year, it's going to be same old, same old. So something needs to happen. Mo, talk me off a cliff, say some positive things. I know you were saying too back in the day. I'll let you boys go again. Talk to you later. Love the show. Bye.
Blake in Denver. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Mo, talk him off the cliff.
All right. The Raiders got the Browns this week. All right. As I said, the Browns struggle just as much as the Raiders running the football with their offensive line because they have injuries there. If it doesn't get any better, if the offense can't generate any yards on the ground, the Raiders are probably going to have a problem for the rest of the year, because then you'll be a month in and you're seeing the same results. Unless there's a change schematically, you're going to get the same results, right? So you have one more week. You have a full month now under your belt. If there's any incremental improvement on the ground, there's some hope. Also, Jackson Powers-Johnson was asked, Antonio Pierce was asked about Jackson Powers-Johnson at the presser on Wednesday, and he was basically asked, did Jackson Powers-Johnson show enough to get more snaps? And Antonio Pierce said, yes, he's shown enough. So we're probably going to see more Jackson Powers-Johnson, but I will say, again, I want to see Jackson Powers-Johnson at guard with Dylan Parham also playing guard. So both on the field at the same time. What the Raiders did last week was they took Dylan Parham off the field and inserted Jackson Powers-Johnson at right guard. So what I'm hoping is with Jackson Powers-Johnson at guard, along with Dylan Parham, you'll get a better run game. You'll get better blockers. Now, Andre James is also struggling. That's a whole nother conversation. The Raiders just gave him a 3-year extension. So I imagine it would be hard to bench him after giving him that money. But I would hope that Jackson Powers-Johnson can improve that ground attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And great call there. And again, back to the coaching thing. Look, veteran coaches with him, but this is not training wheels. It's not training wheels. You're not on a bike on training wheels. You're the guy. You got to make the calls. And so he's got to live with the outcome of that, and we'll see if it gets better. We knew there would be issues. We knew that there would be hiccups. I mean, he's a first-time head coach. It happens. I don't fault the guy. It just is what it is, but that's what you get with an inexperienced guy. It doesn't matter if you surround him with coaches that have been around forever. So, all right, Blake, thanks again. Now we're going out to Classic Raider, I think, who's down in South Florida. Here we go.
Hi, this is Classic Raider. I'm originally from Oakland, currently living in Texas now.
Texas.
I just want to say about the Carolina game, the only reason I'm not getting backdraft from Texans is because the Cowboys lost in the same week. But I'm disappointed in the Raiders. I love them to death. I just need to see them win back-to-back games to impress me. I don't believe the hype Antonio Pierce is putting down. I enjoy what he's doing. It looks fun, but show me more. Show me some wins, then celebrate, Back-to-back wins. Raider Nation for life.
There you go. Classic Raider down in Tejas. I appreciate the call. Classic Raider call in again. Mo, go.
So you remember, Scott, when we talked about in the offseason that it all sounds good in the offseason. Every team has hope. The rah-rah stuff is great. But once the wins and losses start hitting the sheet, then you'll find out what type of team you have. I fear that the Raiders lost a little bit of their identity. I wrote about this on Sports Talk this week, that when Antonio Pierce took over last season, this was a team that was physical, was always going to give maximum effort, and they won at the line of scrimmage. They're losing battles at the line of scrimmage this year, at least in the first weeks of the season. They're getting run on. The opposing teams are running the football, again, averaging 150 plus yards. And they can't run the ball themselves. I saw someone in the chat say AP sold us on the team being able to stop the run and being physical and run the football. And we're fans aren't getting either of those things right now. So I believe they lost a little bit of what was working for them last year. They need to get back to the basics and the fundamentals and, again, find their identity.
Yeah, no question about it. Certainly appreciate the call, Classic Raider. Also, I want to say this too, because this came up in the conversation in what you just said, which is Michael Lombardi, who's been on the show dozens of times, and I know some Raider fans don't care for him because of his background with the Raiders and all that. But he said something the other day that really stuck with me, and it was about the Raiders. And I think this is perfect. He said, intensity impresses, right? So this is the yelling Raiders at the press conference. This is we're bringing back the Raider way and all that kind of stuff. Great. And intensity is needed. Not that it's not needed. And it impresses people. But consistency transforms. Consistency transforms. To me, that's what's lacking here. To your point, Mo, is this team is not anywhere near consistent this year, and it's not consistently in line with where it was after he took over the team last year. So we'll have to see how that all develops and if they can find it very, very quickly. All right. We are now going. Here's Johnny from Florida.
Hey, Scott and Mo. This is Johnny calling from Florida via California. Been a Raider fan for 40 plus years. And it's just sad to see where this organization has gone. At one time, we were the winningest franchise in sports history. Now we're like a disgrace. We got players out there that don't have no heart. We got players that don't want to tackle. But yet again, it's not just a Raider thing. It's an NFL thing, because once you start giving these guys millions and millions of dollars, it's all about the money. You can see players back in the day, they played with broken arms, broken legs. They played because they loved the game. They do not love the game anymore. And it's just sad. It's sad. I mean, what are we doing here? We hire a coach who sits here and says, oh, I'm the Raiders, this and that. I don't understand it. You see guys out there not even wanting to tackle. It's ridiculous. We got a backup quarterback. If he was any good, you think 4 or 5 of the other teams would have let him go? It's not happening.
All right, there you go. Johnny in Florida.
So it seems like the OG Raider fans are fed up already with Antonio Pierce, which is a major shift from what we were hearing in the offseason.
No, they were in love with this. Was a love affair.
So I said this last week. I said the honeymoon with Antonio Pierce and the fan base is just about over. After that loss against the Panthers, it's over. And now fans want to see the results. And I don't blame them. 40 years a fan, and you've been watching pretty much the same thing in a cycle for the past 20 years. I totally get it. But the thing is, right now, you're looking at a situation if the Raiders lose on Sunday, they drop to 1-3, they're 0-2 at home to start the season. And they're looking ahead to go on the road to the Denver Broncos. And, the Denver Broncos had this game circled because they have a losing streak, an active losing streak against the Raiders.
Yes,
right.
a lot
So
of
they're
motivation.
gonna. That's their regular season Super Bowl right there. The Raiders are gonna get their best shot. We could be talking about draft prospects before Halloween, Scott. That's what we're looking at right now. If the Raiders come out flat on Sunday and they get punched in the mouth by Denver, we're going to be doing shows on draft prospects before Halloween.
Oof.
That's where we're at right now, unfortunately.
Yes. So that's, unfortunate. All right. Now we're going to go out to our good friend, longtime caller here, NorCal Raider.
Hey, Mo. Hey, Scott. This is NorCal Raider. Just checking in again. Just listening to the press conferences with our coach and just overall direction with the team. I'm not really liking it because it's too quick to be in the situation already where you're pulling the quarterback. Everybody wants the Raiders to score and make big plays like with Aiden the other day he scored, whatever. We need to have sustainable drives, and that's something we've lacked for many years. A quarterback that could do sustainable drives. I'm talking about marching 90 yards, 80 yards, sustainable.
Ooh.
And last year with our quarterbacks, they were kind of pedestrian, even with O'Connell.
There we go.
The way he moves and everything, it's just. I get Darnold can do it, quarterback like that can do it, but it's a little annoying, and I'm kind of a little bit annoyed with our coach because he's acting like Mike Singletary, like from back from the Niners, calling people out and saying that people can. What are we doing here? You're talking about quiet the noise. He shouldn't have said that. The whole one thing about we want to be a button up operation here, and it's like it's becoming a clown show so quickly, Like I've mentioned before, and I'm going to say it again. We need to get rid of Devontae Adams, trade him to the Steelers or something like that. Get Russell Wilson as another quarterback just to throw him in the hopper or something, But it's not looking good. It's not looking good. Maybe I'm overreacting. Hopefully I'm not. But I don't like the fact that he's calling people out, saying that people aren't trying. If he incorporated that philosophy, then what was done all this offseason? People cashing in checks. I don't know. I'm a little frustrated. Because my frustration, I'm a passionate fan, and that's all I got. Hopefully, we can turn this around. Hopefully, you got to get the running game. We got to go back to our team from last year, and go with our running back strength. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for your time.
There you go. NorCal Raider giving his 2 cents, and people in the chat trying to police fans and tell it. I don't know. You feel how you feel, right, Mo?
I saw the comment, Raider Paul. Shout out to Raider Paul for joining us in the chat. I will say this to you, Raider Paul. For the Raider fans who watch the Raiders in their glory days, win Super Bowls, maybe it's easier to stomach because you remember those glory days, you live those glory days. But if you weren't alive to see those Super Bowl years, it's a lot harder to stomach what you're seeing out there. So if you are used to the Raiders being, at the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the standings, if you were after the Rich Gannon, John Gruden years, Rich Gannon, Bill Callahan years, then this has become the norm for you. And I can see how you get worn out from it, where you don't stop rooting for the Raiders, but you're just kind of fed up and you're not going to put your emotion into it. But to our caller, NorCal Raider, I will say, are you starting to hear the Devontae Adams trade chatter? It's starting to ramp up and say, listen, we're not going to be a playoff football team. You might as well dump him now. Now, he was on Kay Adams' show, and she asked him about it. And basically, he's tired of hearing the rumors. But until the Raiders start winning football games,
it's going to happen.
Some people even criticize him for not giving 100% in these games. It's going to continue to ramp up, and more teams are going to start calling the Raiders for Devontae Adams. And you can probably get, because of his age, you probably won't get a first-round pick, but you could probably get a second-round pick from him if they were interested in that type of deal.
Yeah, that's what I've said too. Second round pick to me would be, especially if a team needs it. Some people are saying trade them now, you have more value. Actually have more value towards the trade deadline when teams are further down and they're in the playoff hunt and they need that player to get over the hump. That's why you wait on it. And Paul, you did say they have 4 trophies. They do. One's an AFL trophy. So you're going way back on that one. Some of the people in this chat weren't even a glimmer in the eye of their parent at that time. Now I was, but not a lot of people. But anyway, Raider Paul, we appreciate you chiming in there. And I'll say, and yes, he says, Paul, I'm going to put this one up because he says everyone wanted AP over Harbaugh. No excuses. Absolutely 100% true there.
Except us. I'll just say
us.
that.
We said it. We said it. We got a lot of crap for that, by the way. Listen, we got to step aside and end the show for the radio audience. For the video audience, the podcast audience, we're going to go with our overtime segment. We're going to get to the rest of the call. So don't go anywhere. If you're watching us on video or you're listening to the podcast, it'll be in the next segment. For those of you on 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas and 98.5 The Bet, thanks for being with us. And we will see you guys all next Sunday. This has been Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast with Moton, Scott Gulbransen. We'll talk to those radio folks in Vegas next week. Take care. All right, we move on for the hardcore people. The overtime. We're going into overtime, right? Hopefully the Raiders don't go into overtime on Sunday, by the way. That would not be good. Well, if they win, it doesn't matter,
over,
right?
If they win and hit the over, then you win some money, and it's all good.
And I've been losing too much recently. So there you go. All right, we're into the overtime segment here on Silver and Black Today. Moton and Scott Gulbransen back with you, brought to you by, of course, our friends at BetUS. So please check them out. Remember, YouTube 150 is the code. Get 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000 on your first deposit, and then you get 125% on deposits 2 and 3, also up to $2,000 as well, just for watching our show. See how we're just giving you this, and they're giving you this. So check out our good friends at BetUS. All right, we're getting right to our next call. It's our good friend out in the islands. At least when he loses a Raider game, he can go out on the beach in Hawaii. This is MDM in Hawaii.
Hey, Brother Scott and Mo. This is MDM over here in Hawaii. And, I just wanted to give a couple quick comments. And really my thinking right now, where we're at is, my question is, how serious are the Raiders really about winning? And you go, oh, of course they want to win. Well, here's my question. We have almost $30 million in cap room, and we haven't used it on really anything, since the major free agency signing period ended. And, we let Josh Jacobs go. And we don't have a number one running back right now. So we let Josh Jacobs go, who is a really good running back. And we know there's some stuff going on between him, the fans, the team, whatever. But I'm sure we could have kept him if we were serious. So how serious is a team about winning when you're keeping $30 million and you're not using it? And the other part about the team is, it's like they're not decisive. I mean, teams that really, want to win, they know what they're looking for, they know what they want, and they jump on it. And, like with Antonio Pierce, we're all rooting for the guy. I'm not going to talk bad on him, but we all know he has a lot to learn. But how long did it take us to hire him? Yet we didn't interview anybody else. And I do have a big problem with the the players telling us who to hire as a coach. I remember when this happened with Joe Bugle, and how'd that work out? And again, I have enough perspective to seeing this team for so many years, like the years when we had the extra draft picks from Gruden. It's like, take Ed Reed. And then who do we take? Philip Buchanan. Oh, there's Aaron Rodgers sitting there. Who do we take? Fabian Washington. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Mike Mitchell, DHC, Michael Huff. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's not that complicated. Most fans know what the right thing to do is for the team. We just, for whatever reason, outsmart ourselves and don't do it. So my question is, $30 million in cap room available. How serious are we really about winning? Or is Davis just happy making all his money, going to Vegas, and that's it? And as a fan, I'm not good with that. I need to see more from them, because I'm not going to put my heart and emotion into the team that doesn't really seem like they give a damn. And I hope I'm wrong. Go Raiders, and bless both of you. Take care.
All right, MDM, always great. Appreciate you. He's always live in the chat as well on YouTube, so thank you for that. And I'll be honest, Mo, we have always been very forward with our audience, which is why sometimes people don't like what we say. Not that we're controversial, because that's not what we try to do. But we will say things that we believe because we're looking at it through an objective lens. And many of you tell us out there that that's why you listen to us. So thank you for that. We consider that a very high compliment. But you and I were having a text message. I'm going to let people in on a little behind the scenes action here. And I texted you, I don't know if it was on Sunday or maybe it was after the show on Tuesday. And I said, I'm looking out there, I'm seeing the needs the Raiders have, and they're sitting there with this $28 million. And to me, that tells me, this is my hunch. I have no inside information. My hunch is Tom Telesco and the leadership of the Raiders know that this team is not near where they need it to be. So they're not going to come out and tell you guys, and I'm not saying they're trying to hide it. I'm just saying it's not smart business to come out and say, hey, fans, come spend all your money to see the games this year, but we're not going to win, right? They're going to get you to believe that things are going to go well because it's marketing. But number two, I think they know they got to get a quarterback. They need other areas to fix. And so this year, and I think, Mo, going back to maybe right after the draft even, I think you said something, and if I have the words wrong, please correct me. You said something of a, kind of like a build year, not a build year. You said something else like, hey, this is not, you're not rebuilding, but you're not also to the point where you can go get a body to get you over the hump to become a perennial playoff team. You're somewhere in that middle, and it's going to take time. And if you make the playoffs this year, if that happened, great, awesome, but you really aren't there quite yet.
Scott, typically when a new GM comes in and takes over a roster that wasn't a winning playoff caliber roster, the first year is a retooling year where you bring in certain players who may help you get to the playoffs, may not. You're okay either way. Of course, you're not going to say that, but let's say you come in, you bring in your bridge quarterback, Gardner Minshew. You re-sign some of your cornerstone players or sign them to new deals. Max Crosby got a new deal, I believe. And you look at the roster and say, okay, if this roster gets to the playoffs, we can build on that. If it doesn't get to the playoffs and we're 5-12, 4-13, okay, we get a high draft pick and we still build on what we have already. We see what works and what didn't work. And I think at watching this league over the last, as an analyst over the last 10 years, you see this over and over again when a new GM comes in and it's kind of like this year where you don't know what you're going to get, right? And I think the Raiders are in that situation where you spent a lot of money on a bridge gap quarterback in Gardner Minshew. And you say Gardner Minshew could be a starter in this league, a low-level starter. He could possibly get us to 10 wins, and then we'll still draft a quarterback even if he does. But if he stinks and we have to roll with Aiden O'Connell and we get a top 5 draft pick, okay, we get a quarterback the next year, and knowing that you have that leash because they're not going to fire Tom Telesco after 1 year. He knows he has time to build this thing. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to win, but he has to look at this from the long-term perspective that we're not going to just throw all of our money at the free agent pool this year. He did sign Christian Wilkins, but we're going to hold some of that money for the following year where we're really going to go in free agency, maybe acquire a player of our trade, and then we're going to make our push. And I think that's where the Raiders are right now. Unfortunately, again, front office is not going to tell fans that because they still want you to come to games and buy tickets. But in their mind, they're looking at it from a long-term perspective. Well,
and in the chat, Costas, our good friend Costas, said, I don't believe that AP would be fine with anything that Scott is saying. If any of it's true, why bother signing Wilkins? Again, yeah, you just brought it up. But also, the way the GM and the coach work together is one thing. It's not an equal partnership, right? When it comes to, you have a working relationship. So what Antonio Pierce doesn't know, first of all, he hasn't been a head coach before, number one. Number two, he's not been a GM. He's not been involved in personnel. So Tom Telesco is not going to give him the whole master plan per se on what he's thinking. That's his job, right? That's why you have separation. And so to me, this idea that AP's got to sign off on everything. No, I don't believe that, Costas. Maybe you're not saying that. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But to me, that's just not how it works in the NFL for very few coaches.
Really quick. Also remember, Costas, that free agency is before the draft.
Right.
So going into free agency, you're probably thinking, okay, we have a chance to get a quarterback. We'll sign a high price player who can help us now. And if we get that quarterback, okay, we got a playoff team. If we don't get the quarterback, we still have a quality player, but we're going to be looking toward 2025. So just keep that in mind, the timeline of the offseason. You sign players first, and then you move on to the draft. And I guess the Rays were hoping that one of those quarterbacks were going to be available at 13, and it just so happened that they weren't.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I saw a lot after Jaden Daniels' great night the other night. Oh, see, they should have given up the 3 number ones. They weren't going to trade it. See, that's the thing. People say, well, yeah, you can give them 3 first-round draft picks, your daughter, and your house, and then you could have gotten Jaden Daniels. Not necessarily true. So yes, did they do enough? I don't know. We don't really know what happened on the inside. But the year before, when they could have maybe tried to get up and get CJ Stroud, that goes back to the other regime, and we'll bury that one because we know how bad that was. But anyway, that was it. Thanks for the call again, and for the comment, Costas. As always, man, we appreciate you being in there. All right, here's Armando from Salt Lake City on the overtime.
Scott and Mo, this is Armando from Salt Lake City. I just finished listening to your post-game episode. Excellent job as always. But since the phrase this week has been business decisions, I wanted to make a call around business decisions. So the first point is, if some players, according to Antonio Pierce, made business decisions at the end of the game, and the organization is going to make corresponding business decisions, then we as the fans need to make business decisions as well with the product that we see and where we put our hard-earned money. That's point number one. Point number two is, did anybody ask Antonio Pierce or anyone in the organization about the business decision that was made by cheaping out when hiring Cliff Kingsbury? Because no matter what you think of Kingsbury, I personally thought it could have been a good fit. That's a bad look to send out to the public, and I think that's what led us to Luke Getsy. Question related to that is, what do you guys think of Joe Philbin as a potential in-season replacement for Getsy? I know you mentioned Marvin Lewis and Coughlin, but we have somebody with offensive coordinator experience on the staff already. Third point with business decisions is, the common denominator in all this, in the 30 years of fandom that I've had, is the Davis last name. And Al Davis has done great things for the NFL and the organization. But in the last 30 years, since I've been a fan, that's been the common denominator in these ups and downs and, frankly, long stretches of failure. Where do we stand on the Brady piece? Because that's the last name that has had success in this century. Awesome job as always, and I look forward to hearing you guys, and let's see what the Browns games brings, because that first half I think is going to be very telling. Take care, guys.
All right, there you go. Armando, thanks again for the call. Yeah, Joe Philbin, you look back at his record. Of course, he was the offensive coordinator for the Packers. The last time he did that was in 2018. He was the interim head coach, of course, because of the firing there. And then as that staff went on, he went on to become the offensive line coach at Dallas. He did not get another offensive coordinator job in the NFL. He instead went to Ohio State, where he was an offensive analyst. Basically, in other words, that's where, hey, you're a buddy of mine, I'm going to give you a job while you look for another job at Ohio State last year. And then, of course, got hired by the Raiders as a senior offensive assistant. So, I mean, is that a guy in the building that you could, if you got to that point? I think so, Mo. But I also think to his point about the quarterback situation and what they're doing here, it's just so hard to say, because you got to get a young quarterback. Do they always work out? No, they don't. But you got to keep swinging at the piñata until you bust it open.
I'll say this: Unfiltered Truth was in the chat earlier, and he said fired James Craig. If you're gonna have Joe Philbin do anything, I would have him coach the offensive line. The way it's playing right now, and we talked about the missed blocking assignments.
Yes.
Joe Philbin coached the Dallas Cowboys offensive line for 3 years, and that line was pretty good. Now, they had some all-pro, Pro Bowl talent there.
Yeah.
But he has good experience, a good track record with coaching up offensive linemen. So if he's the play caller, I would want him to have a hand on how the offensive linemen are coordinated and blocking if you're going to get rid of Luke Getsy. Because, again, I'll say this, as I said on the last show, you don't want Rich Scangarello coaching or play calling for your offense. It hasn't worked out well for him in multiple spots, but I would say Joe Philbin is probably the best candidate if the Raiders were to take play calling responsibilities away from Luke Getsy.
But I'll say this too about the Cliff Kingsbury story is really interesting, because I think people miss out that we were cheap on, or they think we were cheap. The Raiders were cheap. I don't think so. I think if I'm Cliff Kingsbury and I talk to the Raiders, okay, maybe I did accept the job at first, but maybe he saw something that concerned him. I have been in job situations where I tentatively accepted a job and then learned more and was like, whoa, I'm backing out. I got another opportunity. This doesn't feel right to me. Not only that, but then he knew Washington, I'm sure, told him, look, we're taking a quarterback and we're probably going to take this kid. Right? We're going to take Williams, or we're going to take Jaden Daniels. Everybody kind of knew that the Williams was going to the Bears, so they knew it was going to be Jaden Daniels. So he knew, do I want to go work with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, or do I want to go work with Jaden Daniels? No offense to those guys. I'm just saying it's a different kind of job. And by the way, work with a coach, right, that's been a coach before, whatever you think of Quinn, He's been a head coach before versus a first-time head coach on a staff of 39. I know it's only 32. I'm just joking. But to me, that's the other thing as well, is that it's not only just money. Money's big, of course, but from everything we've seen, it seems like that's what happened. So we'll see, but we don't know for
Scott,
sure.
Really quick, I'll take it even further. What happens to offensive coordinators who do well with young quarterbacks? They get head coaching jobs. And I know Peter Schrager said that Cliff Kingsbury didn't want one coming in.
Not right now, right?
Not right now, but after 2-3 years working with a young quarterback, your stock goes up. The price of your compensation, your asking price is going to go up. The demand for you is going to go up. So Cliff Kingsbury is looking at it like, he could have been looking at it. What's my pathway back to a head coaching job, a high paying one? Is it Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew with the Raiders, or is it possibly Jayden Daniels? A high possibility that it's Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, and you're seeing the results right now. Yes. So don't be surprised if Cliff Kingsbury is a head coach sooner or later because of his work with Jayden Daniels, and that was the pathway he took because of that.
Yeah, especially if they turn it around in Washington, then he'll be a golden child again. They'll be like, whoa, they turn this around. Look at this offense. I mean, if they become a high scoring offense and Jayden Daniels is looking like the next, Lamar Jackson, except maybe winning some playoff games, then you're absolutely right. So good call on that one. All right. Now we're going out to our good friend, the legendary, and I have to call him this, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The legendary Jacob from Fresno. If you're new to the show, you might not have heard him, but he's the legendary Jacob from Fresno. Here we go.
The legendary.
Scott. Gulbransen and down Moton. This is Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? So, I want to apologize for my foulness and my anger that I just had to vent out. Sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you got to be the guy, and I was the guy this week. I don't expect much from this team. I haven't, and I think I was pretty even keel, being the guy that said, 7 to 9 wins is pretty realistic. And I'm thinking right now it's probably that 7. We're going to be a 7-10 team. And that is just hard to think about. But when I'm thinking about everything that's wrong with this team, it's becoming more and more evident we're not going to be able to get it solved this year enough to become a winning football team. We're just not going to. I think that 8 and 9, that would be a tremendous victory for the Raiders. And I know we talk about moral victories that don't exist in the NFL, but shut up, guy. I mean, let me enjoy something, because there's not going to be much to enjoy. So as a Raider fan, when I know there's not going to be much to enjoy, let me enjoy 8 and 9 because I enjoyed it last year. Let me do it this year. I think that we have a chance to do a thing like that, to maybe, hit a streak in the end. But we've got to get the right guys up front. I think that means taking out Cody Whitehair, putting JPJ there like we planned from the beginning. I don't know what's going on with these decisions. But here's something I want to ask you guys about. The big thing that I want to spitball with you guys, and it's one of them crackpot schemes. One of them, hey, I heard it from old Joe Blow down the block, but I'm Joe Blow this time, guys. So what do you think about what I got to say here? Luke Getsy, I think we're all settled on this. He's just not going to be the guy. He's not good. He is terrible. He made the Bears terrible. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. A guy who's available, who does have connections. What do you think if we were to bring in a guy like Hugh Jackson, because it's okay with the league rules to do that. He's not with anybody else. Let me know. What do you guys think? Hugh Jackson is the new offensive coordinator for this season. You guys let me know. You take it easy. Go Raiders.
Jacob, the legendary Jacob from Fresno. I don't know what to say to the Hugh Jackson recommendation.
Look, I remember the Hugh Jackson years, and I don't want to revisit that.
Good man.
Good guy, but I just want to move forward. I want a young coordinator who's creative and new ideas, new philosophies. I watched all these games on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, and I'm seeing offensive coordinators do things that we haven't seen much in the NFL. I want someone new. I want some new blood in there. Someone that's going to do something that maybe we haven't seen much of in Raider football. I'm just willing to just move forward. There's nothing against Hugh Jackson. And you look at the Seattle Seahawks, they bring in an offensive coordinator from Washington. I know Seattle's 3-0, but a lot of that, some of that is their defense. I want to see more forward thinking, not looking back in the rearview mirror. I'm ready to move on from the Raiders' past as far as coaches are concerned. We did this with Gruden 2.0,
Yes.
right? And how that turned out. Now, some of that is off the field, but from a roster building perspective, it was what we expected, and it wasn't very good. Squandered all those first round picks. So my point here, Jacob, is I'm just ready to move forward. I did facepalm while Jacob was talking because here we are rooting for an 8-9 season. How bad does it have to be that you're happy about an 8-9 season, Jacob?
You get lulled into complacency with mediocre being good. I mean that's the way, and it's terrible for the greatest fans in football. That's what they have to put up with.
Really quick, Scott, just think about this. Jacob is rooting for 8-9 season. He's calling for Hugh Jackson to come back. Where are we as a Raider community when we're doing this?
Oh, boy.
We got to be
the
down.
Same place we are. The same place we are with the selection of who we have to choose between. I don't care if it's your local city council or whatever political office. It doesn't seem like there's any good choices anymore a lot of the times when you look at it. And so I think that's where we're at with the coaching thing as well. But who knows? But Caxter23 has something in the chat, and this is true. Raiders need to be examined. I thought AP had fixed the culture. We have a lot of letdowns every year. And again, I think that's why this weekend is so important. You got to see it correct itself here, because I think that's a big one. But like I said, culture doesn't win games. It's part of it. But I go back to what Lombardi said this week, and I love this. And I wrote it down. I put it on my desktop on my computer here. Intensity impresses, consistency transforms. I don't care how intense and how rah-rah you are. It's all good. I love that piece too. But consistency. Got to be consistent. So there you go. Good call. All right. Now, The reason he's legendary, Jacob, from Fresno, is because his calls are legendary. Hi, guys. Yeah, so he's got his little things and all that stuff. As Paul over in the UK said, he's got to come out of his shell a little bit. But we have another Jacob from Fresno. I don't know what's going on in the water. I lived in Fresno. I did. Bulldog Apartments right across from Fresno State back in the day. So I know Fresno. But here is Jacob, the other Jacob from Fresno.
What's up, Scott and Mo? This is Jacob from Fresno, but not the legendary Jacob from Fresno. So I've been listening to the show for about 5 years.
Nice.
I'm a first-time caller. But, man, after this game, I don't even know what sorry about that, what to expect throughout the rest of the season. So I see a lot of people talking about AP, talking about the business decision stuff. And I got to say, I don't think he's all talk. A lot of people think he's all talk, but I really do not think he's all talk. I think Raider Nation needs to wake up. He's actually installing the original Raider way, if you really think about it. I mean, I get it. After losses, we all want to point fingers. Oh, Luke Getsy. Oh, O-line, whatever. But there's nobody else that can embody this culture, and keep the locker room together like AP. He's basically a rookie head coach. He's going to make bad calls. I mean, it's inevitable. But years down the line, I think, I don't know. I hate trying to see into the future because after, my whole life, trying to think things will go good with our franchise, it doesn't. But I think years down the line, we'll get our franchise QB. And we will have a solid head coach in AP, probably having a larger effect than Dan Campbell or Mike Tomlin, those player-type coaches. I don't know. I'm saying, Raider Nation, we should just stay in the Raider way. I think our time is coming. And go Raiders, baby.
All right, there's Jacob, the other Jacob. They call pork the other white meat. Jacob's the other Jacob from Fresno. So there you go. And listen, I hear what he's saying there, but here's the question, and I'm not in any way crapping on you, Jacob. But this Raider way, now at my age, okay, and you guys know my history as a fan, and I grew up in San Diego, so I grew up a Charger fan. I gave up on them, and I gave up on being a fan back in 2014 just because I was getting back into covering the league, and they were moving out of San Diego, so I was done. But I will tell you this. The Raider way to me is like badass football that wins, right? It's about winning. Yes, it's the attitude, the swagger, all that stuff is great. But those guys, when they did it, the Phil Villapianos, the George Atkinsons, the Cliff Branches, the all those guys, the Howie Longs, they won. So to me, it's great. You can have a cool culture, but if the culture doesn't translate onto the field, again, and I keep saying it over and over again, Antonio Pierce himself, resume on the grass. All the other stuff, yes, you need that. It's important. And I agree with you. He can embody that perfectly. And I think he did in the offseason. But it has not translated on the field yet. Now, again, we're only 3 weeks in. I'm not pushing the eject button yet either. For those fans that are, I get why you are. But it's not to say that he can't succeed. It's just we have not seen it yet. And no one that is objective. Now, as a fan, it's not your job to be objective. But no one who's objective, Mo, whether it's an NFL analyst at Bleacher Report like you, or it's somebody at ESPN or Fox News, whoever it is, they are not going to believe it until it's done.
That's correct, Scott. But what I also say to Jacob from Fresno, the other Jacob from Fresno, is I think the point he's also trying to make, and it is a point that I've made previously, that no matter how good of a coach you are, and Antonio Pierce is going to make his mistakes as an inexperienced head coach relatively to other coaches in the league. But no matter how good your coaching is, if you don't have a quarterback in this league, you don't have much of a shot. And I'm not giving Antonio Pierce a pass.
No.
But I do want to see what this team could be if they had a young, promising quarterback like a Jayden Daniels or a CJ Stroud, that type of quarterback. Because then you could say, okay, you have a talented quarterback, but your team is still not winning, right? So you look at Jacksonville. They got Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be football Jesus, right? He's not. And now you're looking at the head coach. It's like, okay, you got this talent that's supposed to be, this great football, this great quarterback. What are you doing as an offensive-minded head coach? Now, Tony Pierce is a defensive-minded guy, but again, a head coach's success a lot of times is tied to the quarterback. Remember Nick Saban going to the Dolphins? Didn't have a quarterback, and what happened? Ran him back to college. Sean Payton had Drew Brees. Worked out good for him. Worked out good for him, though.
Yes.
Sean Payton had Drew Brees in New Orleans. Notice that Sean Payton's win-loss record isn't as good with Russell Wilson on the back nine of his career and Bo Nix right now as a rookie. So all I'm saying is, I'm not giving Pierce a pass, but I understand Jacob's point of view in saying, once they get the quarterback, what will this team look like? Will they still be making the same mistakes? Will they still be a letdown after a momentum game like they had between the Ravens and the Panthers? Are they still going to be that mistake-prone team with a quarterback who could potentially uplift the franchise? And I think Antonio Pierce I don't think he's going to get fired this year. No matter how bad it gets, he's going to get at least one more year, and the Raiders are going to get a quarterback, and we'll see. We'll see. Now, the year's not over, but we'll see with Antonio Pierce. I'm willing to give him more than 1 year before I pass harsh judgment on him.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to you got to do it on the field. And Caxter 23 again said, weren't the players complaining about not getting respect? And I said this on the last show, remember? I said, look, you don't deserve respect until you earn it. Nobody gets respect because you were a game over 500 under a new coach last year. Like, who cares? You didn't make the playoffs. Doesn't matter. Or you come out and you open up the season like you opened the season. Like, where's the respect? Respect for what? Yes, there's respect for individual performances. No question about it. Max Crosby is beloved. He's now on the Monday Night podcast before Monday Night Football, which is Tom Brady's been on. A bunch of stars have been on. So he gets the respect. But the team doesn't get respect. Respect is earned by winning ball games and doing it consistently. Because there are a lot of teams who have flash in the pan years and they get a little attention and they go away. But you got to do it consistently. And until that happens, and I'm not saying it can't happen with Antonio Pierce. It very may well. I hope it does. It's good for us. It's good for the show. It's good for all of you out there who watch and listen to our show. But until it happens, it's not going to translate. Remember, I go back, a lot of people talk about Dan Campbell. Remember, Dan Campbell had that rough first year and all that kind of stuff. And then they got players around him. So if the Raiders can get through this year, whatever happens, and go into next year, as you say, Mo, get the quarterback, start to build and get some excitement and give him more tools to work with, great. Then you see how he does. Now, if he gets all that and he still can't win, different story. But you got to give the guy a chance. He's got the chance. and we'll see how it all works out. But I get it. I mean, listen, everybody wants the Raiders to succeed, and most of you are tired of waiting for them to succeed. But I think it's going to take a little bit longer before that happens. But all right, great show. See, we had a nice long overtime segment here with your calls. We appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead.
Shout out to Brendan Williams in the chat. I know you haven't put up his comments, but he's had some good comments in the chat talking about, not looking back in the past and giving Dan Campbell, giving Antonio Pierce a chance. Like Dan Campbell started out rough in Detroit, and look at them now, they're contenders. And that goes to my point, and along with, I guess, Jacob from Fresno, the other Jacob, that once you get the quarterback and you're allowed and you can build around the quarterback and you're still underperforming, then there's a problem. But right now, as I talked about with one caller with Tom Telesco being a first-year GM with the Raiders, I don't like to use the word rebuild because Raider fans are tired of hearing it. But this is basically a Jeff Fisher kind of retool. We're in the middle ground, no man's land year, and you see where it goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. I'm not in any way advocating. I agree with him, with Brandon about, some people have already given up on Antonio Pierce, and that's your right. If you feel that way, you feel that way. I'm not going to try to change your mind. I'm not there yet. I have my doubts based on what I've seen so far, but that's only based on evidence. And guess what? Every week they have an opportunity to put new evidence on the table, right?
Scott, you're allowed to say Antonio Pierce needs to do better here and there, and still say you don't fire him. Yes, he needs to improve in certain areas and making certain decisions, but you don't fire the guy after 1 year. It's okay to do both.
I agree. And here's a real serious question for you, Mo, from Mud Tide. Any chance Jim Plunkett could come out of retirement? Yes.
I mean, he can, but I mean,
they don't allow scooters in the NFL. And I love Plunkett. Don't worry. He can walk still, but I'm just saying.
I mean,
if you think AOC is a statue, can you imagine Plunkett at his age? He could still wing the ball, though. I know that. Right? I mean,
I guess the point was we can't get much worse at quarterback, can we? Yeah. It's funny because, Gardner Minshew is what he is.
Yeah.
Not the great, obviously not a high level starter, not the worst starter, but as I said, you're not going to get the same Gardner Minshew you got with the Colts. And what's the difference? The play caller. He had Shane Steichen in Indianapolis. He has Luke Getsy now. You're seeing why coaching matters.
Yeah. Coaching matters. And I know, I see some really thoughtful discussion before we before I learn how to talk, before we get out of here today, about, hey, quarterbacks, you guys talk about young quarterbacks, but look at the record, blah, blah, blah. And the top 5 paid quarterbacks in the NFL right now are 1-9. Did you know that, Mo?
Yeah, I saw that stat.
You saw that stat today. Now, I got that, and I'm not arguing with it. It's a little bit of a recency bias, because go back and tell me what those quarterbacks have done over the last 5 years, right? Now, I know a few of them got money they should not have gotten, Daniel Jones to be one. But that's the biggest example. But if you look at your opportunity in the NFL, and I'm talking about guys who know a lot more about the game than I do, who are a lot smarter, who've worked in the game. It's not just crowd speak. These guys know what they're talking about. You got to have the quarterback. And the Raiders have supposedly stopgap. So we'll see how it goes. But to me, that's what if I'm the head coach, if I'm Antonio Pierce, he wanted a guy this year. They couldn't get him. So next year, it's Tom Telesco's job to go get that quarterback. They got to do whatever they can to do it. We'll see if it's through the draft because they're so high in the draft that they can get them, or if they somehow come along and they finish around 500, they're middle first round, they got to move up. But you got to build draft capital, which is why, to me, I also believe they're not spending money, because what you're able to do is, if you have to spend a lot of draft capital to move up to get the quarterback, you might have to spend money in other places to fill in other holes, right, Mo?
Right, Scott, but also we talk a lot about the quarterback position. AP better hope he got the OC position right. Because just look around the league. Sam Darnold looks like a totally different quarterback. Why? Because he has Kevin O'Connell calling the plays.
Exactly.
Right? Baker Mayfield, when he reinvented himself in Tampa Bay, he had Dave Canales, who's the head coach of the Carolina Panthers right now. Look what Canales did with Andy Dalton. So along with the quarterback, you have to have the right coordinator. And I still have my questions about Luke Getsy. There's a lot of people doing the chat. So AP, even if he does get the quarterback, he better hope he nailed the offensive coordinator position, because if he didn't, that quarterback is still not going to take the Raiders to the promised land.
Yeah, no, you see a lot of situations, and I think this is true what we saw in Carolina with Bryce Young. You could tell me Bryce Young sucks, fine, but he also was in a terrible situation, hasn't had consistent coaching, hasn't had good coaching, and so he hasn't developed. By the way, Larry Davis, 10 years sober, and the Raiders are the only thing that makes me want to drink again.
Don't tune in there, Larry. Sunday. Don't tune in on Sunday.
Yeah, don't tune in on Sunday. Just check it out. But anyway, that's all great. That's awesome, Larry. Congratulations on 10 years. Paul's also giving you congratulations. Huge accomplishment, man. Proud of you there. Proud of you, and continued prayers for you to keep that going, brother. That's awesome. All right. Well, that's going to do it for the show, Mo. We went live tonight because people told us, hey, I watched Thursday Night Football, even though it's not the Raiders. So it would be better if you guys were on Wednesday night. So we did, not only did we do Wednesday night, but we were live. A lot of people come on and they're like, hey, are you live? And we usually do premiere. I'm in the chat live usually, but tonight we were fully live. I hope you appreciated it. And for those listening on the podcast, you're listening to us on Thursday morning when the audio portion goes live. But always fun, man, in the chat. I love dealing with the chat. I love, because there's so many good points. Mo, you called out a bunch of them, a bunch of the viewers with some really good pieces of knowledge and points there. It just makes this whole discussion more fruitful.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy the chat. If you've tuned into my Bleacher Report lives, I'm always going back and forth with the chat, just giving them, even after I provide my spiel on what I think, I like to give the last 5 to 10 minutes to the fans to, give me their thoughts of what they think, and we could talk about it and just have a conversation as if we were sitting in a bar or a lounge or eatery somewhere, a restaurant, and we could just talk football. It's always fun.
It's always fun. All right, Mo, this is the time of the night when we ask you to tell everybody the 15 TV appearances and your debut feature film, all that stuff you got coming up the rest of the week. Let people know.
Just a small guy in a small town, Scott. No need to come up that way. TNT Sports tonight over at Coy Wire on Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. May sneak a Raider topic in there if I can. Sports Night, I have a piece up there talking about, this is the Raiders must-win game. I don't like to use that phrase, but it's one of those gotta-have-it games. And, of course, on Sunday after the game, I will be live over on Bleacher Report. Win, lose, or tie, we'll break it down and talk about it.
Yes, and make sure you capture that as well. We'll also be live here with myself and Murph from Raiders Fan Radio with the Voice of the Fan segment. We get it right after the game when it's fresh. And he was actually pretty restrained last week. I was surprised. But as he always says, they relieve him of the high expectations very quickly in the season. So, but it's all good. So join us with that. But make sure you catch Mo on his live as well. And we'll be back early next week. Got a guest coming on next week. We'll tell you about next week. But nonetheless, we appreciate you guys being with us. Want to also thank our producer, Mike Robier, who's always working for us and getting you the audio files out there and everything like that. So thanks to him. Also, a big, big, big thank you to our sponsor, BetUS. Remember, don't forget, you get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first deposit, but you got to use the promo code YouTube150. Again, YouTube150. You can get up there and start playing today and hope that I win some money here too, so that I can buy whatever Padres playoff gear that I want. Did you see that last night, Mo? My Padres secured postseason, and they did it by pulling a triple play
over the Dodgers.
That's the beautiful part of it. I know there's a lot of Dodger fans, a lot of Raider fans or Dodger fans. We got a bunch of people in Southern California. Sorry.
You can send your hate mail to Scott. I'm a Met fan, so you send your hate mail to Scott if you want.
Yeah, Met. He's a Met fan, so October means nothing. But anyway.
Low.
Well, they're still in it. They could still get in it. Actually,
still in it.
I shouldn't say that.
Yes,
they're still in it. They're still in it. Yes, Slam Diego, Surfer Bob. I love it. Anyway, but thank you guys, and Mo, my friend. I will talk to you this weekend, I'm sure.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation. Be back on Sunday.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for being on the live video chat. And of course, this section with the overtime with the calls. Again, call in 702-900-7869 is the number. We appreciate you guys as always. Without you, we don't have the show. So thank you. And we will talk to you on Sunday after the game. Take care.